The Asheville Fire and Rescue Department responded at 3:07 a.m. in the morning to a reported fire at the Thomas Wolfe house. The first unit arrived on the scene 1 minute later at 3:08. We reported heavy fire and flames visible on the first and second floor. The incident commander at the time immediately called for a second alarm.
I was trying to anticipate what I was going to find when I got here, but there's really nothing that would prepare you to do that. When I pulled into the parking lot, you could see the flames 30 or 40 feet into the night sky. The smoke from the fire and the downtown lights gave everything kind of a really surreal appearance.
I think for a moment I was taken back and said, this is something that children and grandchildren and people in the future ages will never be able to see and experience.
It took a few minutes for me to really kind of focus on exactly what was happening. We had to question at that time what kind of future we were going to have, because it looked like a fire that was going to take the house completely to the ground. The house is a Queen Anne Victorian frame house. It was balloon frame construction, which means that the walls are basically hollow, and it gives a fire a really easy avenue for which to travel between floors. The fire started on the first floor in the dining room and very quickly moved to the attic, burned the entire roof, which is a very ornate slate roof.
But a house like that had so much life and hate and love and all kinds of friction and all kinds of affection, all the different, just running the gamut of human emotions that was there, and to think that that might be lost.
This house at 48 Spruce Street is one of literature's most famous landmarks. It was here that young Thomas Wolfe assimilated people and events at his mother's boarding house, later immortalized as Dixieland in his most celebrated novel, Look Homeward, Angel. The last child of Julia and W.O. Wolfe, Tom was often mired in his parents' estranged relationship. His mother was a shrewd and aggressive businesswoman. His father, an exceptional stonecutter who battled alcoholism and often launched into oratorical flights of Shakespeare and epic poetry. Tom would be deeply influenced by both parents.
That was the most mismatched couple in the world, you know, and I guess that's how Thomas Wolfe came to be Thomas Wolfe, was because these people, this couple was so different.
We were a family of 8, 5 boys and 3 girls. The first child died before the rest of us were born, and we didn't know her. Now, the last one of the family to be born was Tom. Well, he was my mother's last child, and he was born October the 3rd in 1900. And my mother was interested in real estate, as Tom tells very well in Look Homeward, Angel, and she invested very heavily in property in Asheville and in Miami Beach, Florida.
With the advent of the railroad came tourism. Folks from Florida and the Low Country were flocking to Asheville to breathe the fresh mountain air and escape the outbreak of consumptive diseases. Hotels and boarding houses were springing up all over town. George Vanderbilt had already completed his estate. E.W. Grove would soon add his mark with the Grove Park Inn, and later the Grove Arcade. And Julia Wolfe wanted to cash in on the boom. Her most ambitious undertaking was a sprawling, yellow Queen Anne home just up the street from where she and W.O. had raised their family.
In 1906, my mother considered it was an investment, so she bought it from a family from Kentucky by the name of Myers, and they had the original sign that still stands upon the door above the house, the old Kentucky home. And she moved into the house and ran it as a boarding house, and she maintained the name of the old Kentucky home, and she brought Tom along with her. Tom never liked his house. Why, he was mortified due to the fact that his mother was living at 48 Spruce Street keeping boarders.
And there's a picture of Tom at 5 years, which everyone thinks is fine, when he had curls. He wore his curls until he was a little past 8 years old.
Tom had always shown a strong inclination toward literature. As a child, he read everything at home and at the city library. The librarian said at 10, 11, and 12 years he had read more books than any boy in North Carolina.
Now, when Tom was about 12 years old, and he had finished the 6th grade at the Orange Street School, my mother was approached by a man by the name of Professor J.M. Roberts. He wanted to start a little private school called the North State Fitting School, and it only cost about $150 a year. Well, Mama said, well, that's a lot of money, but I'll try it for 1 year. But she sent him there until he graduated. Well, Tom finished at the age of 15. He was almost 16 that fall, and then he went to the University of North Carolina.
While Tom was in his junior year at Chapel Hill, his brother Ben contracted influenza. In a matter of weeks, he would die.
And when Ben died, that took a lot out of Tom, because he lost his favorite brother. They were very much alike in spirit, and they understood each other. So far as the rest of us were concerned, well, we were a stranger to Tom and to Ben.
Tom returned to the University of North Carolina and pursued his ambition to write.
University of North Carolina, Tom wrote plays. After Tom graduated from North Carolina, Tom's father wanted him to study law or else go to work. But Tom had other ideas.
Well, he talked my mother into letting him go to Harvard. Well, his purpose, as he gave it, was to get a master's degree. But what Tom's main interest was to get under Dr. George Pierce Baker, who was at the head of what was known as English for 47.
Dr. Baker's program taught playwriting technique and encouraged experimental productions of plays. Tom thought playwriting was his calling, but his scripts were so voluminous, his plays were never produced. Frustrated and in need of money, Tom took a teaching job at New York University. The salary supported his vacations to Europe. It was on one of these trips that he abandoned playwriting and decided to write a novel.
And in a London attic, he told me, he began Look Homeward Angel. And he wrote it almost completely in London.
He came back to New York in 1928, and every publisher in New York turned it down. They said it was too long.
And it would bounce back from one publisher and another like a tennis ball, he said.
In his endeavor to be published, Tom met Maxwell Perkins, who would become his editor and friend. But, as with many of Tom's relationships, theirs was stormy. Perkins was insistent that Tom's manuscript was too long. Tom was convinced that it was not.
He had the soul of an artist. He resented any tampering with his work. He didn't regard it as sacred. I mean, he would take criticism and come around eventually, but it built up into something of a resentment. So it was a double-edged sword throughout all his lifetime.
And he left the manuscript with Mrs. Boyd, Madeline Boyd, and she got Scribners interested in it. So they cabled Tom and told him when he came back to America to drop in to see them.
Well, so Tom came back to New York on the first day of January 1929, and on the second day of January he went up to Scribner's at the corner of 47th Street and Fifth Avenue. He said that he paced up and down like a caged lion, that he's afraid to go in.
He finally went in, and after 2 hours he emerged from the place. He was clutching something in his hand.
It was a contract to publish his book under the title of Old Lost, and in the other hand was an advance check for $500.
Scribner's finally published Look Homeward Angel, It would immediately offend the citizens of Asheville as well as Wolfe's own family.
And the book was released, I think, October the 18th, 1929. But we had received our copies. Mama and I got a copy, all autographed by Tom, and he hoped we'd like his first book, and she called me here, and I was just as wild as the natives around here. I couldn't understand how he could do that to us, how he could characterize his own family as he was doing it.
He'd written about our place here, you know, and he'd told the stories about Asheville and about some of the people who were, you know, such, what shall I say, you know, who were so ambitious socially and all of that. He just saw through all that and just saw that the real character of people there.
During the next 7 years, Tom would write and publish several works, including his second novel, Of Time and the River. But he never seemed to be satisfied with his work.
That was one of the things I always liked so much about him. He was never satisfied. He wanted just more and more and more. And I think that's just the sign of a, well, really, I guess, a great person in a way. If you get satisfied, you're ready to die, aren't you?
And in 1937, well, he made his first trip back to Asheville. And the people who had threatened him were the first one to fall in his neck and to tell him how wonderful his writings was.
If I may read just a portion of this last letter which came to me. I think you're wise in wanting to get away from Asheville. I have known what happened to it for years. But I had a good chance to sum it all up when I went back there last summer. It's a ruined and defeated town, and it is full of ruined and defeated people. The old world that you knew is largely gone. I mean Grove Park, stucco houses, boomtown speculations, Wall Street, 1929, and all the rest of it. It's not coming back, Mabel. Did you ever read a story of mine that came out about a year ago called I Have a Thing to Tell You? Well, I have a thing to tell you now, that is, you can't go home again. But there are other places you can go, so why not try to find them?
Since the Thomas Wolfe Memorial first opened in 1949, literally thousands of visitors have come to see Dixieland. But on a humid July night in 1998, it was almost lost forever. The miraculous restoration began the following morning.
We were in the house by 8 o'clock on the morning of the fire to begin our initial assessments of it. We wanted to get in with engineers to find out exactly what we were up against, whether the remaining walls were stable enough to leave, to have people working around. And very quickly that day, state officials determined that there was enough left here to preserve. So the restoration of the house started literally just moments after the fire. About 50 people from the Biltmore Estate, the National Park Service sent representatives, the Parkway sent folks. There were a lot of the city officials that they were busy with bell share, but they sent people down that could give me a hand.
I have no doubt if something like this had happened to Biltmore, that the folks at Thomas Wolfe would have offered the help, would have been there in any capacity we need them.
It's heartbreaking to come into a scene like that and know what was there and how much has been lost, and to just wonder, can they recover? Will they recover? How will they go about it? It's really kind of an overwhelming feeling.
When I first came in, everything was completely smoke damaged. That was the best condition, and that was in the extremes of the house. The owners, that is the state of North Carolina, wanted us to come up with a museum quality restoration of what it was like in 1918 when Thomas Wolfe was living here. A museum quality restoration, there's a distinction between that term and just a simple restoration, in that a museum quality restoration requires that the people who are doing the work replace everything item by item with the exact species in woods, the exact configurations, the exact colors as what we had originally.
A lot of these tiles were loose and the attachments were real loose, so we had to take a lot of them out, and now we're in the process of replacing them because some of them broke. As you can see, this tile was in 5 pieces, and so we reassembled it with glue, with epoxy, because we wanted to reuse the existing tile as much as possible. Everything's mapped out if you wanted, and so we know exactly how this came out and how to put it back and which tiles are new and the orientation of them. This one is not level, but I have to make it the way it was. It's not level. The old house is a little out, but that's the character of the old house.
I've been involved in the restoration primarily of the painted furniture and the upholstered furniture. The longer that the object sits after the disaster, probably the more difficult the restoration. If they can be immediately cleaned of soot and immediately the water damage can be dealt with, things really have a much easier time of it going through the restoration and conservation process.
The piece of furniture sitting behind me is a couch, or it was also called in its day a Roman divan. This is considered to be pretty bad condition, and there is no way that this leather can be conserved. That would be really obvious that it had been patched or whatever. So we are going to take off the original leather and replace it with new, similar leather. We have documented this with photography and in words. We've described it in a text, in a report. We will start to then carefully deupholster or take off all the layers, and we will be looking for segments or layers that we believe to be original, so that when we go to reupholster the piece, we will be doing it in exactly the form that it was meant to be originally.
This woodwork right here is a complete restoration because, again, this is where the fire took place and this was burned beyond recovery. There are places throughout the house where we did Dutchman repairs by taking areas where we could conserve a portion of it. Perhaps the upper part of the trim had been burned beyond recognition or beyond use, and then in places like that we would cut off the worst burned part and sister in or scarf in a piece of the exact material that was used. Now in this case we made studies to make sure we knew exactly what the species was. White northern pine is what all this was originally, and we replaced it with that. This door is a reproduction door. It's the original hardware though, and this door, the dimensions and the configurations of everything and the construction techniques are exactly the way the original door was, and the way we found this out was by taking the burned portions of the doors and making shop drawings of them, which were then submitted to the architect for approval and then sent out to the door manufacturer to take care of it.
The piano is a Hobart cable. It was built in LaPorte, Indiana. That's where their factory was. The piano was built in 1905. It's going to be pretty much a complete rebuild, bearing in mind that I want to keep as much stuff original, historical job. For example, I would not want to replace the soundboard because the essential character of the piano could change. So I'm restoring the soundboard, I'm replacing the action parts, replacing felts, new strings, The tuning pins will be new. All the metal parts that were rusted and not pitted or polished, any that are pitted will be replaced. It's going to be a good playing piano. The bass has probably never sounded as good as it's going to sound. It's got a real big bass. Can't really tell now because it's so out of tune.
The greatest challenge to any restoration is to maintain authenticity. Before they passed away, two of Tom's siblings recorded their memories of the old Kentucky home.
There were 4 large tables long that held 8 or 10 people, 8 comfortably and 10 could be pushed in the summertime. Here at the door where we're standing was the family table. We'd each here, and of course if there was some boarder of long standing, they'd probably eat at our table. And when she set the food in, she set 4 dishes alike. There were 4 dishes of, we'd say, stewed corn, 4 dishes of string beans, 4 dishes of creamed potatoes. Biscuits would come in, 4 big platters of biscuits, 1 for each table, and then they just passed it.
The kitchen is old-fashioned, but it was the same kind of a kitchen that we all had those days.
You will see the mixing bowl. You'll see the old stove that she bought from Mitchell County. It's a wood-burning stove and a coal stove, and has the water back.
And the table here in the middle was the general work table for her and for our servant or so, if she had them here, and it's covered in zinc.
Now this we call the kitchen safe. That's where my mother kept the dishes, and oftentimes she'd have cakes in there and I'd steal them.
We had a meat grinder that would grind up all the scraps of things and for croquettes, and I don't believe I ever ate anything better than Mama's croquettes. They were made with odds and ends of everything, but still they were good. On the porch here is where the boarders used to rock and rock and rock, waiting for their meals. They'd come up from the south in the summertime and swarm into Asheville. There were 20 rockers out here, I know, on this long porch. It's a very nice porch. I think one of the best in town for wit and for scenery and coolness. And this was a favorite spot. And the furniture, there have been about 7 sets of living room furniture since Mama bought the place, but she never would throw anything away. She was very economical, so we have the 7 suits here in the house. In the hall here are the 2 marble tables. Papa was in the marble business, and he covered, he sold monuments and tombstones and statuary, and he covered most of our furniture with marble tops.
Tom said that Papa always wanted to carve an angel. And perhaps he did, but I don't think that he ever wanted to carve an angel. He received all of his angels from Carrara, Italy, and he sold about 15 angels. The only one that's around here that we know of definitely is the one in Oakdale Cemetery in Hendersonville. I had this furniture moved down after Tom died in 1938. I moved it down and stored it. Well, you will see the furniture is rather shabby. Tom always lived as if he was camping out and going to move the next day. He didn't carry any too much for elaborate furniture.
Well, he had 2 typewriters, you know. He took the other one to Europe. It's a smaller one, a Corona. And this is, the typewriter you're listening to now is the one that his last books were typed on.
When people come through this house, it's not new, it's not reconstructed, it's restored, but these are the same floors that the Wolfe family tread upon. These are the same walls that bore witness to some of the conversations and some of the activities that Tom talked about. And so this is not something that's a recreation. This is still the house that Thomas Wolfe talked about in Look Homeward Angel.
The long-awaited reopening came on Friday, May 28, 2004, as the sign was returned to its place above the steps of the old Kentucky home. This poignant moment kicked off an eventful Memorial Day weekend. The devotion to return life to the old Kentucky home was hailed by folks from all walks of life. After nearly 6 years and a restoration exceeding $2.4 million, visitors were again allowed to pass through the halls once walked by Thomas Wolfe and his family. The most famous phrase Tom contributed to the American language is, "You can't go home again." It's true that much has changed. Many of the neighboring houses have disappeared. The freeway across the road zooms with traffic. The tall hotel next door shoulders against the clouds. But the old Kentucky home sits on its familiar site, its air of quietude creating a small island amid the headlong currents of present time. The spirit of Thomas Wolfe still abides in our land, and this meticulously restored house calls out to it an invitation in the author's own words. "O lost and by the wind grieved, ghost, come back again."